Thank you very much. I hope I can get this kind of introduction very short and sweet. So thank you. Please sit down. I got at the airport a few days ago from Liberia, and I met an elderly man who said that he was a Liberian. But interestingly, he asked me, how is Miami? And I said to him, but I don't know what you're talking about. They said there's a hurricane in this place. He just nodded his head and he passed by me. So I think some of you in this hall might answer that question for me because I didn't know what he meant. When he asked me as a Liberian, how is Miami? Well, Mr. President and officers of this great organization, guests, my fellow Liberians, friends of Liberia, my dear friends. I have been invited here today to partake in your honor stock-taking and the reflections of men and women of the pen. An instrument, I'm told, is referred to as mightier than the sword and more intrusive than the sword. But on today, I see in this hall a number of friends, old friends, co-conspirators, so many of you who over the years have worked along with me. And so I see myself as those stranger in your company, because many of you worked, interacted, collaborated, and engaged with me over the years. Here in this room is the midst and testimonies of struggle for press freedom. Struggle we all have endured. Threats, exile, imprisonment, tortures, deprivations in the advancing and protection for human rights and guarantees of our Constitution. Most of us are old enough to tell our stories and our survival of the brutal civil war in Liberia. We are alive today, but we mourn the loss of many of those who have gone before us. I need not mention again or ask to stand in silence, but I must mention that we lost to the inevitable another icon of the pen lately, Philip Wisse of the Inquirer newspaper. A good man, a gentle soul, a homo patriot, a crusader and protector of the pen. Like many who have passed before us, the tales of Philip and many others will be told. They fought the battles, they did the best, they fought very fierce crusades to protect press freedom and freedom of expression in Liberia. And we know that there will be generations of journalists and Liberians yet unborn who will recount the stories of men and women who gave their lives so that we can live and be here today. But one thing is certain, that the combination of the struggle of men and women in this hall and those gone before us have produced the army of journalists and Liberians who will crush any dictator in Liberia who may attempt to return us to the dark days of Liberia past. when Liberians and journalists and many others were intimidated and muscled. Those days are gone in Liberia because we've learned, we've been bruised in battle, but we have emerged victorious today. The last time I had the opportunity to speak was at my school reunion a few months ago in Texas. It was just after the tragic shooting. And at that time, I chided the lack of global leadership of America on the issue of gun violence. I also expressed frustration over the leadership deficit in our country, Liberia. But today, I join America to lament and pray for those suffering from the trails of hurricane destruction in Florida and hope for recovery. I also use this opportunity to call for the end to the war in Ukraine and the bloodletting that continues to deprive and brutalize young children, women, and the citizens of those countries. But today, as I join you and the familiar faces here, I am reminded by what the Bible teaches about trials and temptations. And now I wonder, to what temptation have I been invited here today? Because you have chosen for me the topic, sustaining Liberia's democracy now and in the future, the media and the 2023 elections. The characterization of the media as the fourth estate or the fourth power refers to the press and the news media because of the explicit capacity of advocacy and the ability to frame issues in society. It actually derived from the tree estate as expatiated in traditional European concept, the clergy, the nobility, and the commoners. In recent democratic governance and state evolution, these three estates are portrayed by the separations of power in the legislature, the executive, and the judicial branches of government. The Victorian writer Thomas Carlyle saw the press as a watchdog of the British Constitution and therefore the guardrail of democracy. As we now know, the Fourth Estate was and still is as influential as any of the branches of government. For the press, the role is more an impartial referee, the moral guarantor of how best the branches of government and society as a whole must function for the public good. There has been a general consensus today since Carlyle coined the phrase fourth estate, that the media is a central role in sustaining and developing democracy, and that the press will do so by presenting a full, fair, accurate, and balanced account of developments. Given Thomas Carlyle's observation and what we have come to see as the critical responsibility of the press and general media in enhancing Liberian democracy, the theme of this year's ALJA conference could not have been more appropriate. I suspect that the theme of the conference presupposes that the 2023 general elections, after having had 2017 a peaceful democratic transition of power since 1944, and given this background, it is a test to the integrity of our democratic credentials we may have acquired in 2006. The media in Liberia will therefore be seen as a fulcrum of a sustainable democratic culture in the country, generally upholding the integrity and helping us to sustain our elections. My dear friends, The press in Liberia has had a presence dating back to the mid-1800s. Judging from the compilation of Liberian newspaper housed at Atty, Indiana University, the earlier newspaper heard of was 1830, when the Liberia Herald newspaper was published. And this was just about the period of Kali, when Britain was experiencing his reference of the Pope estate. Karl Burroughs, one of our Liberians' writers, referred to Hilary Teach, a journalist, as one of the most influential and credited with introducing the idea of a Commonwealth government to encompass the autonomous colonies. Since its humble beginning, the media in Liberia have had a front view to witness and feel the impact of the unfolding political democratic culture in the country. The struggle between the independent media and the state in terms of freedom, power, and control to measure the contribution of media and democracy in Liberia will be important. As the Liberian scholar and communications expert Karl Burroughs asserts in his work Power and Press Freedom in Liberia, 1830 to 1970, the incremental implementation of democratic changes will contribute to the emergence of a new political culture, one that encourages loyalties beyond personalities to programs, policies, and principles. The emergence of that political culture largely depends on how the Liberian media will shape public view about the need to change political behavior by the state and the public in ways that will sustain democratic pluralism in Liberia. I need to spend time listening and providing a chronicle of the struggle of media freedom and its parallel for democratic culture. The fight became especially pronounced during the contemporary period involving the president of Tottenham, Talbot, Dole, Taylor, Elling, and now Weir. While gains have increased since 2006, with the signing of the Table Mountain Declaration in 2012, and the Abdullah Kamara Act, which sought to decriminalize free speech, the tactics of the state and its collaborators as an agency in this struggle has not changed. The struggle and the difficulties and the impediments remain the same. They remain the same because state control of the means and tools of communication, including licensing, censure of the private-owned public publishing houses, laws, incarceration of journalists, establishing selective government-sponsored media outlets, deliberately suffocating and refusing to pay the debts owed media institutions, breaking into media houses, seizing media equipment, and many other restrictions on press freedom. Despite this binary feature of the struggle of the press and the deep resentment that contributed to the Liberian conflict in later years, there is one constant factor that remains: that the struggle for democracy involving the media is an unending fight that will continue to be shaped by the changing political, economic, social, and cultural landscape. How can the media sustain democracy now and in the future? It is said that democracy is meaningless without an active, independent, transparent, and free press. There must be structural and functional approach. At the structural level, self-assessment and self-regulation, building capacity and independence become critical. Of significance and importance will be the media, particularly ALJA and PUL, the President of Liberia, must establish a common fund for the Liberian media for investment, training, access to production, distribution of information, and legal defense. It is time that the press, the media, begin to think more broadly about seeing the possibility of investing and building a media enterprise in Liberia. The second is the functional approach. The media must engage in the unfettered and objective delivery of information and truth to the public without fear and favor. The media must create a platform for open debate to prevent the control of information and audience by the state. Most importantly, the media must avoid rent-seeking and largesse from the state and private actors that undermine the objective delivery of information to the public. The media in 2023 election. The 2023 general election, in my view, will be one of the most consequential in Liberia since the end of the Civil War for several reasons. First, it will determine whether the post-war democratic experiment is resilient enough. And second, whether state institutions, including the National Election Commission of Liberia and the judiciary, have the capacity, especially given unresolved issues of the 2017 elections and the recent spike in tension and electoral violence, to deliver a result that will represent the true will of the people of Liberia. The role of the media in this respect must be to create the appropriate infrastructure, to put in place these infrastructures, and adequately prepare to report on the whole range of the electoral process. This will include networking with local and foreign institutions to ensure unrestricted media access and coverage. The media must ensure transparency through its watchdog role as a fourth estate. A media that is self-sufficient and independent will be reticent in reporting stories that will not be swayed by the lure of pecuniary benefits to report otherwise. The media must serve as a platform where all candidates will be held equally. The media must promote adherence to the code of conduct for public officials. This will offer candidates the possibility of a fair, free, and competitive environment. My dear friends, the media must also work with civil society, provide opportunity for better inclusion of the marginalized in our society, especially the physically challenged and the full participation of women in leadership. Over and over, my dear friends, your obligation as a media is to represent and offer to the society the truth and nothing but the truth. Good decision-making depends on people having reliable, accurate information. Sustaining democracy, therefore, is not an option. It is an unambiguous position you have taken in the fight to promote and protect the ideals of human rights, democracy, and justice. The media must therefore take the side of the people. I therefore urge you, the media must take a position. The media must not pretend to be neutral. Both the President of Liberia and ALJA must work together and develop a collective strategy. You must both decide whose interest you want to advance. There are some unadulterated truths about our dear country, and the media must not shy away from these truths. And I refer to these truths in several ways. First, the media needs support to become an effective watchdog. We must collaborate and build constituency for reform. In the 1990s, the Press Union of Liberia and the Catholic Justice and Peace Commission, then under my leadership, signed an MOU which offers free legal services to journalists. We need to revisit these pioneering efforts. ALJA and PUL must develop a more functional relationship that allows us to pursue these initiatives collectively. The media is underfunded and undercapitalized, and there must be collective effort to ensure that ALJA lead the process. ALJA lead the process because you have an advantage of access to credit and expertise to help build a more independent and progressive media conglomerate in Liberia. The truth of our nation. The real truth, my dear friends, Liberia is in peril. Liberia is in peril. The state is sick and in urgent need of resuscitation. Our national discourse is dominated by mediocrity, and our leaders treat us with disdain and arrogance of power. Earlier this year, when I was invited to serve as a keynote speaker at my alma mater, St. Patrick's, I lamented the national decay of our country. I said that our country is grievously ill and that an urgent intervention was needed. I spoke of unchecked industrialized corruption and crime. I spoke of a government that was tone deaf and not responsive to the cries of its people. I advised the administration to change course and take heed. After my speech, the government employed the full resources of its apparatus to attack and vilify me, instead of listening and correcting the course. Now the US government has stepped in with sanctions, saying exactly the same things I said. Permit me to use this opportunity to restate my assertions. Our country is sick. Liberia is sick. It is seriously ill. Our country is sick when people are dying mysteriously in our streets. Series of unexplained disappearances and murders have occurred, and the government cannot fulfill its basic function of providing security and protection to its population. And the president's solution, when asked, is the purchase of CCTVs. The country is sick. When there is no basic health care, and when the government can't even pick up trash from the streets, raging with filth. And the filth is not only the physical filth, but we suffer academic filth. The country is sick when we refuse to pay our teachers and tell our nurses and other healthcare workers that we will fire them if they demand a pay. The country is sick when people cannot exercise the fundamental rights of expressing themselves about the ills of society without being subjected to attacks. And when the ruling party constitutes a militia to attack, beat, and eliminate opponents. I am sure as media people you are aware of the attack on university students. Its bestiality, the brutalness, the glare of inhumanity to young students that went viral around the world. It occurred on no other day for the day of our independence, July 26. The national leadership deficit in our country goes to the core of our governance. We have incompetent leaders who have no compass to lead. The nation is stranded in a quicksand. And the leaders are stranded because they are clueless. The nation is sick. When another sovereign nation must whip our officials and public servants and sanction them for acts inimical to the public service. And our government conceded and affirmed the whipping by suspending its officials and later forcing them to resign. How can we brag of sovereignty and independence when we are compelled by another government to fulfill our duty and account to our citizens? It took a foreign country to discipline and hold our public servants accountable. How can our current bunch of leaders lead when citizens march almost daily to the embassy of the United States to whip them into submission? The fundamentals of statehood have been compromised and betrayed. Worse still, our diplomats are alleged to be exploiting decadent and debased values. Decadent indeed debased values as arrested in Korea. While our chief diplomat, the foreign minister of our country, is alleged to be undergoing investigations surrounding sexual assault and human trafficking. Our nation is sick when the legislature betrays its solemn oath. Our national legislature has a lot of honorables, not honorables. The legislature is pretty much a rubber stamp, passing budgets and laws, confirming people and demanding from the executive church. In many cases, there have been allegations of bribery. In addition to giving themselves huge purses, rather than intensifying the enactment of good laws and effectively performing their oversight responsibility to address insecurity, education, healthcare, and the people's business. The nation is sick when our judiciary remains corrupt and politically subservient. Our nation is sick when ordinary citizens at home and abroad, as well as opposition politicians, blind themselves to the real issues at hand and ignore their civil responsibility to work together for the greater good of our country. Our nation is sick when the tragedies of drug addiction and sexual assault are on the rise in our community without solution in sight. Where do I stand on these issues and some of them? I support the dissolution and dismantling of the Ministry of Information in favor of a Commission on Tourism and a Commission on Culture. The Ministry of Information is a relic of an outdated past and an instrument of intimidation and threats to press freedom and freedom of expression. It is a tool in the hands of a backward and entrenched decadent political order. Decree number 40, establishing the Ministry of Information, must be repealed. Where do I stand on other issues? I support the call that the U.S. government withholds its support to the National Election Commission if those sanctioned becomes candidates in the 2023 election. U.S. money cannot and must not be used to support the vehicle that will promote the participation of individual public sector, sanctions, suspended, forced to resign, and want to sneak their way back into the public offices to loot and plunder. We have to find a way to stop them. The press must begin to help us discuss and debate these issues. I have a view on diaspora voting. If not in this election, it should be possible in future elections. That Liberian citizens who live out of Liberia must be able to vote. The Constitution and the framework of the Constitution were far-sighted by adopting absentee ballot to allow a multitude of Liberians scattered across the world to participate in the political process. The reason that election be an inclusive process intended to enable every Liberian citizen to participate in the choosing of the president and other elected officials. Absentee ballot is not a cosmetic goal, rather is a component, an extension of the voting process as provided for in Article 80C of the Liberian Constitution. The voices of Liberians in the diaspora will also help to give new meaning to our democratic attempts in fostering a more principled and peaceful Liberia. There is a need to review the biometric voting that have been introduced of late in Liberia. It must be reviewed in light of the queries raised by political parties, the questionable procurement process, the lack of education, and the lack of full understanding of the technical, logistical advantages and disadvantages of this process. My dear friends, I have provoked some of these issues to encourage a deeper debate which will clarify and spread the instrument deemed mightier and more intrusive than the sword, to begin to stimulate the debate needed to change our country around. We need to work. The idea is to create an environment where political opinion can be festered by the media. As an opinion leader, I will be condemned, I will be criticized, but I know there will be many who will understand my position on these issues. My colleagues and friends, all is not lost in Liberia. I live in Liberia. I work in Liberia as a lawyer. All is not lost in Liberia. Because there are many Liberians, women, youth, religious leaders, and some of you in this hall who continue to engage in education, health care, drug prevention awareness and rehabilitation. Lawyers who honestly try to defend the clients and defend the downtrodden in Liberia. Honest public servants, dedicated and committed to the work. Teachers who suffer every day to ensure that our children are taught. They offer us hope. Journalists who toil every day to provide us unfettered news. There is hope in Liberia. All is not lost in Liberia. But I want to say that we have made tremendous gain in our struggle for press freedom, for freedom of expression, and fundamental rights. Unfortunately, some governments want to take credit for this. They want to steal the credit. I disagree. Most governments have been reluctant and pretentious about press freedom. The real heroes and heroines of press freedom, many of you I see in this room, you have fought. You have paid your dues. Some of you are being honored here today. You are the real heroes for press freedom. Some lives were cut short prematurely. I would not credit the government that have surrendered. I would credit those who were victorious in battle. Let the word go forth from this place at this time. Liberia can never be the same again. The change we seek, the struggle we fought, and continue to fight will bear fruit. Reforms in Liberia is possible because of men and women like you in this room. Men and women who toil every day and continue to pay the price. Men and women who talk to your parents and your friends and brothers and sisters at home and influence the thinking of our country. There is hope. There is hope because we are here. And that is why we are here today. Liberia will certainly rise again. But we must start the talking. Let's act and act together. I thank you all very much.